Welcome, welcome, welcome to Jimmy Snow Has a Podcast. It's September 6th, and today marks 60 days from the election. We're here to talk about the polls, the politics, and other things happening in the world, in the news. I am Jimmy Snow, the one with the podcast. This podcast is supported by the wonderful people over at Patreon. That's at patreon.com/Jimmy Snow. Patrons get the show always ad-free, plus they get the extended episode of the little things we get up to after the show. This podcast is leftist, godless, dairy, and bullshit-free, just like me. Joining me today is the wonderful, illustrious musician, comedian, and future governor of the moon, or maybe even Utah, Sarah Gibson. Hello, Sarah.
Hello. That's a pretty groovy song you've got going on.
I love this. I spent a lot of time figuring out what song I wanted, ended up creating a big list of possibilities, threw it away, went live last week and was like, we're at like midnight. I was like, we're here until I find a song. And then this song was the one that ended up being it. And what's funny is for the outro, we'll be playing the song again. And I like it so much, I'm just going to let it go until it's done. The volume will change.
Decrease.
Yeah. But over the course of time, for us, it's recording at a regular level. I'm only turning it down for us at the moment. It'll all be fixed in post. That's what matters. What I'm trying to say is, I forgot where I was going with it. Oh, the outro is the same song, but with words. And the song is actually about the video game and TV show Fallout. And so it's about surviving a wasteland. And I feel it actually, even if you've never heard of it, it definitely applies to the shithole country America's becoming. So it fits pretty beautifully.
It's great. It's kind of, it was giving like indie movie character development climax, you know, They're being actualized as a person. So very different than what you just described, but I like it either way.
Yeah, definitely. I get it. We have a lot to talk about today. We're going to be talking about the rules for the upcoming debate between Harris and Trump. We're going to be talking about the tragic shooting that happened earlier this week on Wednesday. We're also going to be talking about this breaking story that Russia was apparently funding right-wing grifters such as Tim Pool, Benny Johnson, Lauren Chen, Lauren Southern, all of the Laurens, every right-wing Lauren was funded by Russia. That's every single one of them. All of if you know a Lauren right-wing, she was getting a check from Russia. Anyway, we'll be talking about that as well as a bunch of other stories. But let's start off today with the question of the day. There is going to be two, and you can answer by calling the podcast's voicemail and leaving your thoughts. Today's question of the day: as the election closes in, will the candidates focus more on policy or identity politics, and who will be worse at it? If you think that Harris is going to go fully identity politics, give us a call at 1-833-SNOWPOD, SNOWPOD, or 766-9763, and tell us how. And if you think Trump is going to be worse with it, same thing. Personally, I think it's going to be Trump. I think Trump is going to be a lot worse with I think the Republicans always accuse the Democrats of being the identity politics people, and then they can never shut up about it. Yeah. They can never shut up about brown people, trans people, queer people in general. And then a second question of the day: will Joe Biden pardon Hunter now that the breaking news is happening that Hunter Biden has pleaded guilty to his, I think it was tax fraud charge? 1-833-SNOWPOD, 833-766-9763. Any thoughts on the question of the day so far? Either of them?
My thoughts on the question of the day?
Yeah.
The identity politics, I think Harris is probably going to focus the most on policy. And I think Trump will probably in the beginning try to like utilize identity politics to weaken her, or at the very least, like the appearance of her publicly. But I don't think that's going to be ultimately successful. And he's going to have to actually start discussing policy. Those are my thoughts with that. And the second question was about Hunter Biden, if Biden's going to pardon him.
Yeah.
I don't think so. No.
I think he will. I think he will wait till after the election. So if sentencing happens quickly, Hunter might even see a day or two in prison. But I'm going to just go out on a limb and guess that the judge is going to schedule the sentencing to be after the election so as to appear not to be trying to influence the election. But yeah, I think why wouldn't he? And in a way, it's kind of like, you know what? You got out of the way. You stopped running for president. You already have a right to technically pardon anybody you want. But like, I think we're all just going to go like, yeah, okay, fine. That's your son. I get it. You gave up a second term, a chance at a second term. You get a freebie. And of course, the right's going to go nuts about it. But
of course,
the hell can they do about it? And I don't know if he'll wait until after the certification of the new election, do it as like a final day in office, or just wait until the election's over. But I don't see why he wouldn't. For the identity politics one, it's interesting because Trump has been trying to define Kamala since it became obvious she was going to be the nominee, and just sucks at it. Honestly, as rude and crass as it is, he did a better job at it when he's on the golf course telling people, I don't know if you've seen the video of him just going, she's such a fucking bitch. Like, I don't know if you saw that.
I have not seen that, though.
It was a more solid attempt than his like really desperate, that communist Kamala is what he says. He never even says it right. Or like the other day where, what was it? No, it was on Wednesday night on his town hall with Sean Hannity. He forgot once again who he's running against and was talking about beating him. And if Biden does such and such, and at some point he catches himself and tries to excuse it. But the man is, let's face it, too old to be president.
He's too old. He's got a little twinkle of dementia or some kind of cognitive decline happening on his end as well, which is so nice because Kamala. That's it. Kamala so like mirrors that back to him because she is so strong cognitively. So I'm excited. I really want to see them debate.
Everything is not stuck, and it would be one thing if he had picked a vice president who isn't the worst person ever for vice president. Like ideologically, picking Mike Pence felt worse when he did it back in when was that? 1941. Now it feels so long ago. But when he picked Pence for 2016, it was like, wow, he really went hard right. This was the guy who was passing anti-queer legislation in Indiana, and it just felt horrible. And then he just picks JD Vance, who, first of all, has changed his position on Trump in the last 9 minutes. Yeah, like the guy is just, but seeing him try to interact with regular everyday people as he's like, I'm a hillbilly, one of you. I went to an Ivy League school, but I'm like one of y'all. And then he's walking in, what kind of, I'm here to get some donuts. Okay, what do you want? Whatever makes sense. Is nobody's donut order ever. The guy can't correctly order donuts.
I didn't even know about that either. You're a treasure trove of these little factoids.
I'll have to send you the video after. It's so awkward. He goes in and he's talking. He's like, how long have you been here? And the woman is like, I don't want to be on camera. He's like, what's that? I don't want to be on camera. And he looks at the camera. He's like, okay, people, just shoot around and cut her out of any footage. How long have you been here? And then she says something like 3 years and just, okay, good. So if you've heard people making fun of JD Vance doing an impression where they just keep going, okay, good. Okay, good. That's where it's coming from. That's getting memed in a lot of places, but he's just weird. He's an awkward, weird guy. And now they're trying to turn it. Donald Trump tried to in an event go like, we're not the weird ones. We're not weird. You know who's weird? That Tim Walz. He's weird. JD's not weird. Tim Walz is weird, but JD is not weird. They're the weird ones. I've never been called weird before. Which is definitely not true. Weird.
I love that Tim is just steadily calling the right just weird. Yeah. That is the funniest thing ever. He's like, they're weird. They're a bunch of weirdos. I'm like, he's so real for that.
I love that it's stuck. They didn't care about, and it's part of it is that I think they kind of get that they are, because whenever you are, look, I definitely think that party has become hugely fascist, but it's not hard for them to convince themselves they're not fascist, right? But then when they're like, well, weird, what's weird? Just because I go to church every Sunday and I pretend to do a miniature act of cannibalism to a guy who left 2,000 years ago, but he's coming back with those cigarettes any day now. And then I leave from there and I go vote to keep the queers down, even though they're not hurting anybody. And I start obsessing over what is in everybody's pants and want some sort of rules where we actually check your genitals at the door before we let you in a bathroom. What's weird about me? What's weird? You tell me.
No, they're children of God, Jimmy. They're not weird.
I am a child of God. Do you ever sing old Mormon hymns? I do all the
Yeah,
time.
sometimes. I really like As I Have Loved
Oh yeah.
You,
Do you
love
remember
one
learning as a
another.
kid the sign language for it?
No, I don't.
Oh, you didn't do
I
that?
know I did learn it. I don't
Oh,
remember
I don't
it at
remember it
all.
either. I
Oh,
remember
okay.
this is in there at some point. But yeah, they did like it's like the one they in the children's hymn book of the Mormon Church, there's one song where it guides you how to do the sign language for accessibility reasons, I suppose. It's very nice. One
That's
song for you deaf people to enjoy.
just
Um,
one. The one of
yeah.
the best ones for sure.
I hope I'm not being offensive to our deaf listeners. I couldn't resist that joke. Just think about it for a second. I just couldn't resist saying it. It was a little messed up. I'll apologize in advance. Speaking of apologies, I need to, you get it, right? Our deaf
The deaf
listeners.
joke? Deaf listeners.
There
Oh
you
my God.
go.
No, I did not get it.
Okay. They can read the transcript. It's a perfect transcript. If you look at the transcript of that podcast, it was a perfect joke and a perfect transcript. I did make some corrections. I did a pre-show to get everything started. And I meant to say abolish the Electoral College, not abolish the popular vote. Apparently there was some confusion about that. Abolish the Electoral College. Yes, popular vote. If we're going to have a president instead of a parliamentary system like we actually should, a coalition system like we actually should, we have a form of government that nobody is interested in around the rest of the world, but we're like two-party presidential system, terrible Congress Senate system. Hooray. But anyway, if we're going to keep doing a president, definitely by popular vote. And then there's also been some, I should make this clarifying thing on episode 1. I don't actually drink. The blue shirted version of me in the thumbnail, in the cover art, more is an expression of how I feel internally. That was, in fact, it's not only is it green tea, it's decaf green tea.
Okay.
In the cup where I'm sitting and I'm looking like really, that was causing some confusion. Which story would you like to do first? The guest is always going to get to pick out of the 3 main stories we're going to talk about. We've got the debate rules have been dropped for how they're going to debate. We've also got the shooting at the high school, which if it sounds like, wow, he's using the tone like it's just another day in America, well, that's because it is. Or story 3 talking about this revelation that Russia was basically funding these right-wing super celebrity grifters.
Well, considering I didn't know about any of that,
yeah,
I would say let's start with the third one. Let's 3 and up.
I like that one too. I feel bad because you asked me, should I familiarize myself with the news? And I'm like, it's probably just going to be what you're hearing about anyway. Just come and hang out. It won't matter. And now you're like, I don't.
Well, it's because I've been just so ill.
It's all good. No, I'm saying it's my fault. I told you not to bother. Like, no, you'll absorb it. It'll be fine.
That's okay. Well, thankfully, if you tell me from the context, I'll probably have opinions.
Oh, yeah. So this is from an indictment that released this week on Wednesday. This is according to Forbes. I'll just read a little bit of the top line from Forbes from you. The Justice Department filed an indictment Wednesday accusing the Kremlin of pouring millions into a media company linked to prominent online right-wing commenters, as a part of an influence operation pushing pro-Russia propaganda and disinformation on social media. And the numbers that we are hearing about this is already crazy. So the media group, while it's not listed by name, it's unnamed. You can easily figure out when they're talking about this Tennessee-based online content creation that's working with these different creators. Plus, some of these creators have come out and been like, just so you know, this did happen, but we're not working for Russia. We're the victims of their misinformation campaign. Campaign. And so it is clearly Tenet Media, which turns out to be Russian funded. They had a fund of something like $10 million. And some of these individuals, it's being reported that Tim Pool was making like $100,000 a week and now segments he did, like where he is screaming, Ukraine is the number one enemy to America just a couple of weeks ago, are starting to make a lot more sense. However, you have a lot of individuals trying to paint this, as we sort of mentioned already, as though they're the victims of this misinformation that they were targeted. And technically, that's what the indictment says as well. But let's think about what that means. Russia wanted to continue to spread misinformation. We know that they've been pumping misinformation in. They wanted to increase people's doubts about whether or not Ukraine should be funded, and they want to generally sow discord. That campaign's been going on for years. So for them to go, hey, let's go ahead and throw some millions of dollars at who? The people who have been most successfully falling for this campaign for years, the people that our little spy network has already successfully exploited. Let's pump them full of cash and get them to continue doing so. It's just, it's so funny that they're like, we're the victims here. Meanwhile, I went ahead and looked it up. What these individuals had to say about like Eric Swalwell, for example, in the past, when it was found that he was dating a Chinese spy. They immediately broke it off and stuff. And yet these people were calling for an investigation, his resignation, that he should be shamed. Marjorie Taylor Greene was calling that shit out like in Congress as though he was working for the Chinese government. So when it's the Democrats, they're obviously a part of the whole operation, the entire racket. When Republicans are literally accepting money from Russia to spread Russian propaganda.
They're victims.
Victims. They're victims.
So how are they claiming that they're victims exactly? Like, how are they claiming that the wool was pulled over their eyes?
This is the funny thing, because only in like a as literal way as you can get, I suppose, because technically this group did not disclose that its funding source was Russia. In fact, I think I have the information here where it was actually claiming to be a private investor named Edward Gregorian. Edward, EDU, not even with the W. Edward Gregorian. And nobody, when they were vetting this thing and going, boy, they seem very interested in us in the whole pro-Russia stuff and sowing discord and turning the U.S. upside down by shitting on vulnerable people. Wonder why they're so, it must just be that Edward Gregorian loves Russia and hates trans people. That's what makes the most sense.
So was he Edward Gregorian, reaching out to these people and saying quite literally, like, I want you to speak against Ukraine? Or like, what was the pitch? Does it say anything about that?
We're still finding out what the details of those things are, but you can see that these different channels had a sort of increase, at least it would appear, in that kind of content, trying to sow discord about whether or not we should be supporting Ukraine, especially, and then just otherwise wanting to push. I mean, you could even imagine a way where this could happen anonymously, where they're just like, if we give more money to the people who are already saying this stuff, and I think that's what their defense is going to be, is like, listen, we're a victim because they were giving us money, but we would hold the same opinions. We wouldn't, we'd
still be anti-Ukraine and trans regardless.
Right. We'd be continuing to spread their misinformation, though I don't know how well that defense is going to go, since Tim Pool in a very short period of time seems to have completely changed his mind about Putin and Ukraine, as he's been shitting on both of them, or shitting on rather Putin now. And I think, let me double check if this happened, because I believe last I checked, he had put, it was either, I don't remember if it was a past one or a current one. So I'm pulling up his Twitter right now. Yes, he has since put a Ukrainian flag into his little handle.
You're joking.
Right. So there's even a level of like, as soon as you found out this was Russia, all of those opinions, it turns out, weren't your opinions, because now he's released this statement. This is my statement regarding allegations in the DOJ indictment. Should these allegations prove true, now just imagine that I'm giving this statement. If you're having a hard time imagining him, imagine I lose all my hair and wear a beanie all the time because I am emasculated by the fact that I am bald. I've been bald by choice multiple times. I look fine bald, so I wouldn't have to always hide it in a beanie. Anyway, should these allegations prove true, I, as well as the other personalities and commentators, were deceived and are victims. I cannot speak for anyone else at the company as to why they do or what they are instructed. The Culture War podcast was licensed by Tenet Media. It existed well before any license agreements with Tenet, and it will continue to exist after any such agreement expires. The only change with the agreement was that the location of the live broadcast moved to Tenet's YouTube channel. I and TCW, the Culture Wars podcast, never produced any content for Tenet Media. Everything they just said, I don't understand how you find these things to be different, but whatever. Never at any point did anyone other than I have full editorial control of the show, and the contents of the show are often apolitical. Examples include discussing spirituality, dating, and video games, which again is weird. If it has zero influence on the editorial choices, why have your ginormous opinions that you've been screaming about seemingly changed overnight? Anyway, the show is produced in its entirety by our local team without input from anyone external to the company. TCW is a separate company not associated with Timcast or other properties. It exists solely for the production of the Culture War podcast. That being said, we still do not know what is true, as these are only allegations. Putin is a scumbag. Russia sucks donkey balls. And to the journalists who wish to jump the gun, create their own narrative, or lie about what's currently on, you can eat my Irish ass.
My Irish. So has he explained in any way why his opinions have so drastically shifted since all of this came to light?
That's what I'm saying. If there was no editorial control, then you would be sitting there and going like, they were just giving us money because they essentially liked us, but my opinions are still the same. Ukraine's still the number one enemy and, whatever. But here he is.
The most frustrating thing about the right is that they're constantly calling the left grifters, while they will glaze anybody who gives them a little bit of money, a little bit of attention. Like if they bolster them and lift them up, they're full send in there. And then the second they're exposed and it makes them look bad, they will immediately pivot in the other direction. And so it's like, it's frustrating to see these commentators where it's like, if this is your opinion, like stand on that opinion, but seeing them move with like the court of public opinion, or, oh, this is making me look bad, or, oh my God, I've actually been being funded by Russia this entire time. And so it really solidifies for me the fact that most of these people on the right probably don't even believe the vast majority of what they're saying. It just makes them money and it makes them popular within this certain demographic.
Yeah. Yeah, and 17 minutes ago, we are a little secret to people. We're recording this on Thursday. Probably going to be only a first. It's to make sure I have the process down for the future. But we are recording this a few hours before Friday starts. So anyway, 17 minutes ago, Tim Pool tweeted "Slava Ukraine," and I'm just like,
oh my God, girl, log off.
Yeah, you gotta love it.
It's just embarrassing.
They're also posting about polls that are coming out that they think are benefiting Donald Trump, who is favored to win the presidency. Can't chance each one, but in looking through, and actually, I like to cover as we close in 60 days to the election. We're definitely going to be talking about the polls a lot and seeing where we're at. I don't know why they are unironically sharing what I doubt even isn't like at this point. I'm like, this is probably a modified image, because no matter how much you like Trump more than Harris, the idea that he has a 20-point lead for winning the Electoral College is a little bit insane. That's pretty unhinged.
That doesn't seem right at all.
Yeah. Yeah.
The last one that I saw, it was like 8 points or something.
She is slightly ahead even in a lot of the Electoral College polling as well. Slightly. Mm-hmm. It is unfortunate that it's so close, and I'm really hoping that this is going to dramatically change in the days leading up, because it's wild. I've been saying this a while. If 20% of the country thought Donald Trump should be president, I would think too many people in this country suck. That's too big a group. And yet, he might win. So it's clearly more than 20% after everything.
I had a really interesting conversation with somebody over the weekend. I was out of town for a premiere for a short film that I was in. Yeah. And I was at dinner with some of the cast and crew and their families and stuff. And I was talking to one woman. And at first, a lot of the people describe themselves as centrists, which always intrigues me, because I'm like, what do you mean by centrist? Like, are you actually right wing and you don't want to say that? You know?
Usually, yeah.
Usually, not always, but usually. And so I start talking to this woman, and we had agreed on some things about the pandemic that ended up being proven to be false, blah, blah, blah. And it raised some red flags because I was like, do you agree because you know what you're talking about? Or do you agree just because you thought the whole thing was a conspiracy to begin with? But we start talking about like women's rights and the border and all of these things. And very clearly to me, I realize, okay, you're definitely right wing, but maybe not as crazy as a lot of these Trump supporters. And then she says the famous thing, I hate to say it, but for the economy, I just think Trump's the only one that's going to be able to pull us out of this. And I was like, why do you say that? Why do you think he's the one that's going to pull us out of this? And she's like, well, that whole stipend thing ruined the economy. And I'm like, you realize Trump was the one that was sending out those stipends to begin with. You realize
he insisted his signature be on them, in fact.
His signature. And she was like, oh, right. And I'm like, right. And then we are talking about his businesses. I'm like, you realize he's probably filed bankruptcy more than he hasn't with his businesses. And so we're talking about that. She doesn't remember these things or doesn't realize these things. We started talking about Project 2025. She had no idea about a lot of the stuff on there. And, you know, I mentioned to her, even if he's not the mastermind behind it, I don't think he's diligent enough to not just sign things that come across his desk from the Heritage Foundation. It's not like he vetted thousands of potential Supreme Court justices before he appointed the two. And by the end of the conversation, I realized she didn't support Trump because she actually agrees with him, because she's actually informed. She's just bought into like Fox News propaganda. And so like, That's what is so scary, is not that everyone in the country is necessarily like a bad person that agrees ideologically with all the stuff Trump represents. They just don't, they're completely uneducated on the issue. That scares me more, to be honest. They like don't even realize what's at stake.
And the stupid thing is that they are saying all these things fully not understanding what they're saying at all. It's like when we're talking about the economy has actually recovered beyond the point that it was while Trump was in office. However, inflation obviously still sucks, and we see inflation. And unfortunately, if you're talking about prices going down, but inflation not sort of saying even, that would mean an end of corporate greed, because if you actually do reverse inflation, that's a sign you have a recession. So they don't, if you have deflation. So you don't actually want deflation, but yes, corporate greed should stop. The corporations stop being such dicks. But the other thing is, like, when you look across the world, inflation has happened to everybody, but it's happened to us the least because Joe Biden's policies, the Inflation Reduction Act, actually succeeded. And the idea that this guy who was saying inflation, or not inflation week, but infrastructure week, is right around the corner for his entire term and then never delivered it.
Yeah.
Entire term. What fundamentally was a big part of how Biden did it, never actually pulled it off. The guy who said the better healthcare bill, it's coming out. We're going to be releasing that in a few days. Everybody's going to love it because it's going to make everybody happy. Even the people who thought they didn't want to see Obamacare, they're going to be happy. The right's going to be happy. Never released it. They tried to actually pass the repeal of Obamacare without releasing what this supposed replacement was going to be. They basically tried to Brexit us. Don't let them understand what we're taking away from them, and then make them deal with how it's going to fuck them over after the point. But at the end of the day, I'm just sitting here going, how can anybody vote for the guy who tried to overturn the election and suggested we suspend the Constitution? And that's not hyperbole.
No.
He said the words. He wrote it in a post that it is up. Sometimes it is okay to suspend the rules, even the Constitution, in situations like this, situations that don't favor him. The guy is as anti-American, undemocratic, but these people want that. The people voting for him at this point are people who are either too dumb to remember things that happened very recently, or fascists who want a dictator.
Or just uninterested enough where they are not even like, don't even have like the slightest bit of education on things that were incredibly public. Because that was the thing about that conversation that shocked me the most, is situations that were incredibly public, like things that happened that were all over the news. I keep hitting this damn thing. All over the news, she wasn't even aware of. And, you know, I can't knock someone for getting exhausted of the amount of information and news that we're constantly being berated with. Like, it's hard to stay engaged and active in something that seems like it never ends. But at the same time, it is affecting your daily life. Like she said, she hadn't voted in a local election in 20 years. And to me, that was the most upsetting thing, where it's like you're putting all your hopes into a guy that has enough power to ruin everything, but is still like, the fact that you're not even invested on this base level tells me all that I need to know. And it didn't even make me hate her. It made me sad for her, because she's talking about feeling undervalued as a woman in the country, not feeling protected as a woman in the country. And I'm like, you're going to vote for a guy and vote for a party that historically and systemically views women as less than people in more than a few situations.
They
like
overturned
valuing
Roe
a
v.
fetus
Wade.
over you. Yeah.
How protected do you feel now?
Exactly. It makes no sense.
I hear you with the you can't hold it against them, but I can, and I will, especially if they're going to express opinions like, I just think Donald Trump is the one who can get us out of this. First of all, get us out of what? Right now, the economy is better than when he was in office. So what is he going to get us out of? He's going to get us out of inflation by causing a recession? Maybe he would do that. Donald Trump, when he was in office, the reason why the economy looked good is because tax cuts inflate the stock market. The stock market has nothing to do with how the middle class or poor people are actually doing.
No.
In fact, what it did was exploded the deficit and made sure that more middle class and poor people are going to have to pay for billionaires to have had their taxes lowered. He literally exploded the deficit. How is he the guy who's going to get us out of this? It just doesn't add up at all.
No, it doesn't add up. And I've explained to so many people, like, the way that tax cuts for billionaires have a massive impact on like the middle and lower class, and like bailouts with the stock market. And that alone should be enough to be like, I do feel like both parties at this point are like serving some of the same gods, for lack of a better term.
Sure.
But why not vote for the party that's doing less of that shit? You know, like it sucks that we are picking like the lesser of two evils, so to speak. But even when I'm speaking to some people who are maybe a little bit more like progressive, centrist, and they're like, well, I'm going to vote for Jill Stein or RFK or whatever. And that's going to be better because for whatever reason, I feel more morally superior for not contributing, yet you are still contributing. And for me,
Right.
It's just like, grit your teeth and just make the choice that, is preventing the most amount of harm.
Yep.
And so for me, it comes down to, and I hate to be this person, but it comes down to being kind of selfish and just putting your head in the dirt because you don't want to deal with it, even though it is going to affect you and everyone, regardless of you turning your head aside or not being educated, what have you.
Even with this lesser of two evil arguments that people are like, well, why should that even be the choice? It doesn't matter. That's what it is. But let's be clear on the lesser of two evils. Let's make it the lesser of two bowls of shit. You are tasked with eating one bowl of shit, and one of them is a bowl of neat-looking dog shit. And the other one is a giant bowl of all of the shit in the world that's ever been shat. They're both bowls of shit, but there's a clear choice amongst the two bowls of shit. One of them is much worse than the other.
How I like to say it is you have two bowls of shit, but one of them's on fire. And I'm definitely not eating the bowl of shit on fire, though I'd prefer not to eat any. But to me, it's so clear.
Might kill the bacteria.
It might. Let the fire die out, then you got a crunchy shit.
No, you just got shit charcoal. But no, there is a clear difference, and there's a clear difference on human rights issues and stuff. And then even with my leftist friends and people who, I am a leftist, though obviously they like to purity check you and tell you whether or not you are according to them. But
if you are truly leftist,
the fact of the matter is, there was a great debunk by Mehdi Hassan this week for people who want to say like they're both just as genocidal and actually Trump didn't start any wars. He actually escalated several wars. He used more drone strikes in 2 years than Obama did in 8. So whether or not he started new ones, he escalated the hell out of them. He oversaw a genocide in Yemen, and people who are just like, well, we're doing genocide now. Trump didn't do genocide. Yeah, he sure fucking did.
And we've been doing genocide, unfortunately.
And when you're, yeah, right. It's unfortunately it's what America does. But when you're sitting and you're going, for the next 4 years, we're going to use the tool we have, which is protest and upset, to try and affect how things are happening now in Gaza. And there's one person who could be affected by that. Maybe she won't be, but could be.
She could be.
And there's one person who can't be. There's one person who right now is Netanyahu, who is doubling down and trying to add things to the ceasefire deal and insist that they stay in the Philadelphia corridor and all of that shit that is going on. Trump, in response to that, were he president now, would be like, by the way, you need to add that you get all their oil, you get all of their, what little things does Palestine have? Take all of it. You need to, anything they have that's good, take it as part of the deal. That would be the deal I would make. Whereas
What
Biden is at least
that's
saying,
good, that's left. That's,
I don't know. I mean, ports,
yeah,
some ports, maybe, like they just want to live. They just want to have, you've already leveled their country. The genocide goes beyond the killing of them.
Yeah.
A lot beyond it.
The destruction of everything in the Gaza Strip. Well, and when people are saying like they don't want to vote for Kamala because she hasn't like actively like really fought for a ceasefire, though I feel like she's more pro ceasefire than anybody else in this situation. For me, it's like
certainly than Trump. Yeah.
Oh yeah. It's like, okay, but ending, like Trump won't end the genocide either. So it's like, it's just so silly. It's like, I can't be involved, but you are involved. By removing yourself from the situation, you are still involved and you are contributing to a worse outcome.
Right.
And so as much as I like love the idea of people who are dreaming of a utopia and a utopian situation for which you can truly vote for someone who absolutely represents you, we are not there. I don't know when or if we will ever be there. And so it's like, if you want any kind of change, any kind of protection, just, lovingly, XOXO, get over yourself and make the decision that reduces harm.
Right. Voting third party or voting when the third party is impossible or not voting is a vote for the worst option.
It is.
That's just how it works. You sitting out is voting for the worst option. So if you're actually sitting there and going, well, I'm not voting for either. Yes, you are. You're voting for whichever one is actually worse. Now, you might argue that you think Harris is worse. And listen, people have the right to be really fucking dumb. So you could argue that, but it's your right. There's such a level of get the fuck over yourself and win the election. And part of it, I think it is an admission. We need to move on to the other stuff here, but yes. I will just say, I think part of it's an admission, and the admission is I don't intend to do any real activism other than bragging about how I'm not going to vote on the internet. What level I even appear to be an activist will go into stasis for 4 years once the election is over.
Yeah, well, this is it. They're drawing a line in the sand. They're saying I can't be involved, but that's all. Like they're truly uninvolved in every aspect. And so I get frustrated. It's like, if you don't want a two-party system, if you want things to change, vote in a way that's going to give us the best possible chance of changing things, and then actually do something, bro. You can't just talk about it and complain every election cycle. Exactly.
All right, we're going to move into try and keep this tight, because I could do this literally forever, but I'm realizing at current pace, we're wanting these things to usually be an hour, maybe a little bit over an hour.
All right, we speed run them.
We got to move. Well, that I'm incapable of, but medium run.
Medium
a light
run.
Jogging. We got to jog these things. We'll go in reverse order then from what we were talking about on Wednesday. Unfortunately, once again, and all too often, another school shooting. This one, honestly, like the only reason it was surprising or really like drew attention more than your average school shooting is the death count was actually kind of low. We're not used to it only being 4 people. Like, wow, school shooting, only 4. Well done. The shooter seemed to have been there to, I don't know, but completely surrendered as soon as he was confronted and turned himself into authority. So the shooter is also alive, which is a little bit rare, but otherwise it's America. It's just an average Wednesday. So it didn't really slow that many people down. The gun of choice, I don't even feel like I have to say it. I think as I'm describing that a school shooting is happening and people are visualizing it in their head, they can already see that this 14-year-old boy was holding an AR-15.
Yeah.
You already know that's what it is. Let's be honest.
14. Oh my
14
God.
years old. The right around the time it was about to begin, somebody did call in a tip to 911, apparently anonymously. I'm sure they're going to figure out who it was and actually warned that there was going to be shootings, though they claimed at 5 schools that day, starting with this is Appalachian High School in Georgia. And part of me almost wonders, like, what are the odds, since they said at 5 schools starting there, what are the odds it's an unrelated thing? Because part of me is sitting there going, people probably use this. I remember kids would call them bomb threats when I was going to school to get out of tests and stuff. And I'm like, what if it does turn out? Obviously, we don't know that. There's no reason to believe that. But I don't know how a 14-year-old was planning to get to 5 different schools working solo. But clearly somebody knew. I guess you could say potentially the teen himself is the one who made that call, but somebody knew and called in, and they're still looking at that. The breaking news that's happening this evening is finding out that the father of the shooter has actually been arrested, charged with second-degree murder, 4 counts of manslaughter, and 8 counts of cruelty to children. I'm assuming, but we won't know until the details come out.
The father?
That I'm assuming that the father is getting a sort of like satellite charge, because I'm betting it was his AR-15, and they have reason to believe that the AR-15 was too accessible to the child. We did see earlier this year the first 2 indictments ever. I believe it was earlier this year, not late last year. Earlier this year, first 2 indictments ever of parents being held accountable for giving easy access of guns to their children. And it was, in fact, a child who had been given a gun as a gift, had been taken shooting and learned to use it and everything. So for the first time in America, some parents were held responsible. None of this does anything to actually make these types of things happen less often. If you look at the stats for mass shootings in the US, we are up to 385 for the year. I mean, that is obviously more than 1 a day. And in fact, for the last 3 years, we've had over 600 per year. Nearly 2 a day mass shootings in the country. School shootings are obviously less than that. But once again, we're all going to sit here and people are going to say, well, because this would be too hard and this would be too impossible. Nothing's ever going to happen. And all we're ever going to do is report on it. I think it's incredible that the governor of Georgia, Brian Kemp, did a press conference and actually said, when a person asked, how are we going to stop this? This is not a time to talk about policy. It's a time to.
God.
And the reason they say that is because it means they never have to talk about it. Because
it's never a good time to talk about.
Right.
Well, another good reason, and I mean, who knows if she'll succeed in this, but Kamala Harris wants to have universal background checks, even in like person-to-person sales, especially for anyone that's selling more than 5 guns a year, and then do away with the gun show loophole, which I think is huge. That's actually a little bit of progress somewhere. I still think you should probably have a license. Like if we're going to have guns, you should have to have a license to own a gun.
Yeah,
and no AR-15s, but that's something.
Justify your need to have a gun. Obviously, people were going to say, well, the Second Amendment says I don't have to. Right. Let's change the Second Amendment then. There are amendments for a reason. They can be further amended. But other countries, even countries with guns, don't have this problem. And the big difference seems to be how many guns we have, because it is insane. I own guns, which I hope get banned, and at some point a mandatory buyback happens. In the meantime, while I am surrounded by a bunch of hateful yokels who would love to use their guns to take me out, I'm going to set myself up to hopefully be able to defend myself, or at least get 1 or 2 of them as I go. I assume if January 6, 2025 happens, that starts happening on the local streets, I'm probably done for, but we'll see. We'll see what happens.
Yeah, I definitely, as things stand right now, I just don't, I don't know. The cops, I don't think, anytime I've had a problem where I've had a stalker or something and I've called in a police report, they have never taken it seriously. So I just don't trust them to protect me. So I would like to protect me until something changes. But I definitely think justifying it, like I think you should be allowed to hunt. I don't think there's anything wrong with that. But why do you need an AR-15?
Yeah.
you don't. You
Yep.
just, there's, unless it's just for fun or you want to be a mass murderer, there's literally no reason to have that. And I think it's scary to have one for fun.
And even the people who want to say like, well, it is for protection, it is for and yet you don't even support regulating additions to the AR-15. Even Trump passed, or maybe it was an executive order, banned bump stocks. And y'all got that overturned, challenged it and got it overturned in the Supreme Court.
But it's
something
just
that
like,
turns it
why?
into a machine gun. In effect, I know somebody's gonna be like, no, a machine gun is technically this many rounds per minute. And this, you'd only be able to kill hundreds of people per minute, but a machine gun could technically kill thousands. It'll be something stupid like that. But the fact of the matter is you don't need these things. They're made to kill lots of people. And you would have some kind of point if you didn't support unlimited modification of them. And I think this is so stupid when they want to sit by, well, it's so that we can take back power from the government if ever we should need to. And it's like, and that's never going to work, because if the war breaks out, you are bringing a gun to a drone fight.
A drone. Well, yes. And then I was also talking to Vadim, for listeners, my partner, about this yesterday, where I think a lot of these people are in their anarchistic fantasies when they're talking about this, but most of the people within our generation have not been to war. And that's very different from generations prior, where it's like, I believe my grandpa, if someone came to take his rights, he would kill a motherfucker. But I do not believe that these 32-year-old dudes working in finance and banking are gonna kill police or going to kill their neighbor. I just do not believe that they have the balls to actually do that. And I don't believe that if they did do it, that it wouldn't severely fuck them up mentally, because we're just living in a different time. So to me, people are having a little apocalypse cosplay in their brain. They're making their fallout shelter. They have their 27 guns. I don't think they actually would use them. I don't think most people would stand up against the government in that way, with the way that society is now, which is kind of depressing, but I think it is the reality of things.
Yeah, it's a silly thing. Now, I will tell you, there are some places in the country where you have these little groups, these little militias up the mountains, up in the Appalachian Mountains, up in
Appalachia.
Up in the head of up in the tops of the Rockies, that little, the panhandle part of the reverse panhandle, the upward pointing of Idaho, that area up at the top. Y'all don't want to know what goes on in that area up at the top. But the clans around, they might not call themselves the clan. They've got some other name, but they're doing some fucking weird shit up there. Do you remember years ago, Ammon, what was his name? Ammon something, the Mormon group that took a building and somehow held the building, a state building, years ago.
I vaguely remember the Ammonites. Did they call themselves that?
I don't remember if they call it, but I think his name was Ammon Bundy, which was funny.
Okay.
Yeah, Ammon Bundy and his family, anti-government, militant. They had a militia, and they held down and so I see things like that happening in a little localized area. I don't think it's going to last very long, but at the end of the day, I'm real tired of, I don't even care if you fucking love your gun, like you make love to that gun and you think love is love and you deserve to make love to that gun. I can even feel for you a little bit. It's weird, but I feel for you a little bit with your paraphilia. Sure. At the end of the day, we're doing nothing about it. And the idea that more guns, that's what we've been trying. It's not just a matter of what should we try? Well, what if we finally did more guns? That's what we've been doing.
We've been doing more guns.
We've been done doing it, and it's still going up. It's almost like more guns increases the problem. So obviously the answer will be, once again, a lot more guns.
Significantly more. We should start having bombs, I think.
Yeah. I would as a personal citizen, I would like a nuke. Please give me a nuke. The mutually assured destruction between me and my neighbors, I'm sure that will keep us away.
Half of the state. That's what I would really love. Sometimes I get kind of paranoid and I'm like, oh my God, someone could use a nuke on us. And then I start looking up, I'm like, how far away do I have to be from the detonation of the nuke to like be okay? And I'm not far enough away from Salt Lake, and they would for sure hit Salt Lake if they were hitting all the capitals. I'm like, I gotta get into the boonies.
Gotta get out of here.
I gotta get out of here.
Not that it would be worth it if they hit all of those, you're going a couple of days later. Remember when California was on fire and a bunch of cities in the Rocky Mountains, it was their problem because the clouds came.
I do remember intimately.
Yeah. Denver was horrible. I literally had to buy special air filters because it just smelled like burning cedar wood in my apartment the whole time. It was a terrible time. I'm just like, you're not, if that many nukes, you're pretty toasted no matter what. Nobody wants to shit in the woods anyway. So what life are you escaping to? If anything, I'm going to find out what the main target is and move there. If I could have my apartment where the bomb hits just to make sure that I have no chance of surviving, that's what I want. My
God. I'm just going to go to the middle of the ocean and then that's where I'll die, I guess.
That's literally like I have nightmares about being in open water with no land on any side of me. Oh yeah, that's terrifying to me. That's like the scariest way to die.
The ocean doesn't scare me at all. Space scares me, but the ocean doesn't freak me out. I'm like,
if you go up to space, there's nothing else. If you're in the middle of the ocean, you're in the spot where you can't see anything else, and yet the most alive part of the world is below you.
Well, yes. Technically, yes. But there's just something about being like weightless and not attached to the earth that just feels wrong to me. Yeah. Whereas like if I get swallowed up by the sea, I get swallowed up by the sea. But I don't want to like burn out and die in the atmosphere of the planet. That freaks me out.
You'd pass out immediately, though. You wouldn't really experience any of it.
Jimmy, don't ruin this for me.
I'm telling you, it's better. It's better. Here's the reason why the ocean's scarier. The things that I'm worried about happening in the ocean, the things I get stressed about, the idea of, are all things that could actually happen. Okay. Whereas when it's space, it's always, no, I'm not saying yours is bull. I'm saying the things I think of in space are like magical things where I'm like, what if a being cursed me with immortality, but shot me out into space with only a piano? And I'm headed toward nothing. And all I have is my piano to become a master of the art over the course of billions of years, but never get to play it for anyone else.
You wouldn't even be able to hear it, would you?
Well, I'm cursed with immortality. They can make me hear the piano. You're right. It wouldn't make a sound really but in this scenario, in this magical scenario, it doesn't make a sound.
Then you can
or it does
play
make
the
sound.
piano. That is in space. See, I'm all freaked out. I can barely even talk. In space movies, when someone's like shot out into space and they're just going forever, I'm like, that is the scariest thing I can imagine because you'll just be spinning. You don't know what's up or what's down. Also, I get very like motion sick, which would make it seem like the ocean would also be a bad choice. It's also a bad choice, but it's not as bad as like not even knowing which way down is. That is so scary. I can't even tell you. But yes, of course, like I'm not afraid of aliens doing anything to me. I would love for aliens to exist. That would be sick actually, but even if they were evil or whatever.
So you would at minimum, depending on where you were, or maximum, you would lose consciousness in under 15 seconds in space.
If I was shot out in a suit, just like out in space?
Yeah, because imagine the vacuum. All of your fluids, all of your organs are suddenly going to want to come out of you. Now, they're not going to, they're detached. Oh, you're saying in a suit. Gotcha.
Yeah, in a suit. No, I know if I'm not in a suit, I'm going to die immediately.
Yeah, so just take your helmet off.
I guess that's a good point. But then I just cling to life so tightly, Jimmy.
But that's what I'm saying. If you're in the middle of the ocean, nothing anywhere, you're basically how long can I pump my arms? At least in space, you don't have to physically sustain yourself in the space. True. In the ocean, I might float naturally, but maybe not one day. But if you're not floating naturally, you have to put the effort in to keep yourself above the water. And so you're basically just playing a game of like, I'll do this until I'm too exhausted, and then I'll fall under the water. And then I'll have one last surge of adrenaline where I think I can actually bring myself above up. and then I'm going to. Now I have actually heard it once you accept it, and I've heard that drowning itself isn't actually horrible. It's the lead up to drowning.
The lead up to drowning does seem horrible. See, I was thinking I would go out into the middle of an ocean on a boat and see how long I could survive that way.
Oh, I see.
Yeah, but then I would like starve to death or dehydrate to death eventually, or from the elements to death. But at least I'd get like a little bit more of like a last hurrah, because I love being alive for some reason. Even when I hate it, I'm like, I'm so happy I'm alive.
Least relatable content.
So sorry.
You love being alive? It's so odd.
I do. It's so
and then
exciting.
I'm just sitting there thinking, like, if someone put the button in front of me and I could end civilization, would I do it? Surely not. But would I? I'm glad no one puts the button there.
I'm glad they don't either.
By all marks of humanity, let the earth live again.
Well, I might get behind that, actually.
It's very sort of like, I'm not an antinatalist. I am alive, so I'm not going to hit the button. But here's if you hit this button the moment you die, everyone else. No, that's more messed up. I'm not that selfish.
Oh yeah, that's so fun. You wait till you've lived your full life.
And then you're like, I can just fuck this planet up before I go, because my death will fix it. It's going to be fine. It's going to be
Incredible.
Great.
Wow.
Looking at the polling that as the polls that end today, right now, as far as the general election goes, Kamala Harris is up 6 points in a lot of polls, some up 4 points. If you are breaking down the Electoral College, still favors her a little. However, in actually breaking down state by state, I will say it's a lot closer and shittier than is remotely comfortable.
What's it at?
I mean, it's within the margin of error in enough states that one might worry that he could still pull it off. Pennsylvania is especially one that is, if they can win Pennsylvania, it's pretty good for them. Right now, when you look at the states that they're both guaranteed, the Democrats have a slight lead, 226 to 219 for the Republicans. If Kamala Harris won Pennsylvania, then she would only need like one more state, maybe two, depending on which state. If she could basically take the thing away. No, that's not correct math. She'd be at 245, so she'd still need 25 Electoral College votes to win. But unfortunately, you look at some places and it's not looking great. I think she probably has a good shot at winning Michigan. But if Donald Trump is able to win back Georgia, is able to win North Carolina, and then it comes down to Arizona, Nevada, and Wisconsin, he technically could pull it out of the bag. So the biggest hope is that she gets Georgia, she gets Pennsylvania, and in that scenario, she's at 261, and then she only has to win one of the other typical swing states, and she'd become president. I'm hoping that all of this is for naught, and that, in fact, she's going to outperform the win that Biden got. I'm also hoping that women save us, and, it's shitty to put that on them, but abortion's on the ballot in Florida. And 1 million boomers died during the pandemic in Florida. I don't see why Florida can't be won by Harris, but I think people in Florida haven't been told that they could do that. And so enthusiasm to vote and go and vote for the constitutional amendment for abortion, because Florida right now has one of the most restrictive abortion laws. 6 weeks is the ban. Literally an amount of time where you might not even know you are pregnant yet. By the time you learn, if you are in Florida, you no longer can get an abortion. If somehow that was pulled out, if that magically happened, she'd be at 256 of 270. Basically, there'd be several individual states that she could win and completely win the presidency. Otherwise, she would need to get Nevada and Arizona. I don't know why Florida isn't being tried for more and why it is being even considered likely winning Republican. When we've seen every other state that has had abortion directly on the ballot, women have come out and voted for it. And if they will just also, on top of that, vote for president, I think she would have a shot, but we'll see what happens. Women, please save us. We men have ruined the country. I know it's not fair to ask you, but please fucking do it.
That's why I get so frustrated when I'm talking to women and they're like, I think Trump, blah, blah, blah. I'm like, girl, shut up.
We're about to fight.
We're about to fight. No, but just oh, like you have no idea what's at stake, like overarchingly. So, ladies, please, for all of us, it's so much more than abortion, even down
Yeah.
the road.
Yeah. Access to birth control. Also, just universal health care. How are we this far away from it? How is the person who is against it still not just like could, but is somewhat likely to win? How are we the one country who still thinks we have the best healthcare in the world, unless you are the majority of Americans who put off getting healthcare because you can't afford it?
Well, it's crazy because so many people on the right, they want to become a business owner. And I know you know this, Jimmy. When you become your own business owner, you have to provide your own insurance. And if you reach a decent amount of income, you're looking at paying like $500 a month for insurance sometimes. That's like the type of insurance I need. If you've heard my
That's how
tummy
much my
growling this
premium
entire
is.
time, that's why I need insurance.
Yeah.
And it ends up being like $500. And I can't tell you how many people I know that maybe skew a little bit right who are now faced with the fact that they're having to spend that much money on insurance and they're now wanting universal health care. And it's like, yeah, it's because it's insane that you have to pay that much money. And then when you're going to the doctor, you're still paying a copay. You're still like spending XYZ. There's still so much that isn't covered by insurance. Like mental health care is still not covered by so many insurances, and or at the very least for a reasonable amount with a copay. And so people don't realize until they're in that situation or they have extreme medical emergencies that
Mhm.
universal health care, it's not hurting you. If anything, it's ensuring that if something crazy does happen, you're taken care of, which why would you not want that?
And it pays for itself. This is the dumbest part of it. The reason why other countries do it is because having a healthy workforce makes more taxpayers.
Yes, absolutely.
It literally pays for itself. Yes, we're going to have to fuck over a lot of insurance companies, as we should. A lot of
God,
pharmaceutical
I hate them.
countries, as we should. You should be allowed to get rich, but not filthy rich by providing medical services. I'm happy to pay doctors what they're worth. I'm happy to make sure that medical innovation is paid for and that we are rewarding the people who, which by the way, how often is it actually the person who figures it out? How often is it actually the researcher where people are like, well,
No.
these people, Pfizer deserves it because of all their innovation. No, Bob deserved it.
It was
Carrie deserved it.
It was a woman that discovered the mRNA. I can't remember her name. And she got like literally almost no credit and she didn't make any money off of discovering that.
Yeah. But the
It's
companies who get the
ridiculous.
patent and the license, boy, they get all of that money. And so you're not actually talking about the companies that we should admire for their innovation. We're talking about bankers. We're talking about finance bros who have the cash to do it. We're talking about, it's funny that Martin Shkreli is so hated for this. And I agree, he should be. But the fucking thing is that he's not the only one doing it. They're all doing it, but he did it for a medication and did it abruptly. So we noticed it all that he took an AIDS medication and pumped the price up to thousands of dollars and was basically like, cause I can, I own it. You can't stop me. Ozempic, the number one cause of death in America is related to obesity. In fact, it's like the first three of them. It's the heart disease, asthma related. Like people are super sick because of obesity. Ozempic, it turns out, can solve a lot of people's issues. Actually, not just related to obesity, but semaglutides, we should say. Meanwhile, because of the licensing, because we can't do anything about it because of the patents, a month course of Ozempic, Wegovy, Mounjaro costs somewhere between $1,200 and $15. The manufacturing cost is less than $10 for a month.
It's absolutely horrific. And this is one of the reasons that this isn't unrelated, that I don't like the Osbournes at all, because what's her Osbourne, the child? She was saying, she's like, well, if you're rich, you can just get on Ozempic and like, it's more pretty much incentive to get rich. Like, why are you complaining when you could be getting your bread up? And I'm like, what? How detached can you be? Like, you get to go on Ozempic because you're slightly overweight. There are people who are dying that need Ozempic that can't get on it because it's too expensive, because you've made it a trend and somebody saw that and took advantage of that. It's wild, but universal healthcare would help to alleviate these things.
Just promoting absolute nonsense. Get rich. Do you know how hard it's going to be for an obese person to get rich? because of the health complications, you fucking idiot. And the fact of the matter is if everyone got rich who needed to get rich to have resources to live, no one would be rich. The prices would skyrocket. Rich people only care to exist if there's poor people to contrast them to. That's why we have to destroy the system we're in. We have to take that away from them, the poor people to contrast them to. Make them a little more miserable because they can't see how much better they're doing than everybody else, and bring everybody up to a minimum standard of living that's actually worth living. I don't know, respect the opening of the Constitution. Talk about that right to life and the pursuit of happiness and liberty. To a lesser degree.
Extend it to everyone
Not
instead of just the white guys that wrote it.
Right. And the tokens that you fucking march out. Anyway, to quickly wrap up on some things, the debate between Kamala Harris and Donald Trump will be this Tuesday, September 10th. This will be their first debate. It's happening on ABC. And the rules are now in, and it's basically going to be very similar to the debate between Biden and Trump. It is interesting because Harris said she would actually like the mics to not be muted between their terms. Donald Trump declared he would also prefer that, and yet his campaign fought to prevent it from happening. And ultimately, that is the case because they know that it actually advantaged him because he was just as rude. He was just as big a sack of shit, but now only his opponent could hear and we couldn't all hear. So it actually gave the illusion to people that he was being respectful of Biden's time, of his opponent's time, when in fact he was being a giant fuckboy and probably real mad because his wife won't talk to him. Will
she not?
I don't know, but she clearly hates him now.
Well, of course.
Yeah.
I don't know if she ever loved him to begin with.
I think no. So in reading the biography from her best friend, after her best friend left the White House, and hated Donald Trump because of January 6th, Stephanie something, I think is her name. But anyway, I actually do think she at one time loved him, but yeah, there's a pretty clear hatred and resentment now. And it's funny that, again, the family values people who will pick apart everything, including trying to say like the affection. How come Tim Walz greeted Doug Burgum more enthusiastically than his own wife at this event? That kind of shit. Will pick anything apart, is ignoring the fact that this man who is a serial adulterer, divorced several times, is now in a relationship just for show because he's afraid of what the polls would do if it was publicly known that Melania is leaving him. Let's be clear. That's what's happened. And on her end, she's probably getting a pretty good payout. And how long does she have to wait? He's 78 years old and she's seen how many KFC buckets they've gone through. The math is probably simple for her.
See if he wins or loses. And if he wins, then it's just a few more years. And if he loses, maybe a year or so.
Honestly, if he wins, what does she need to stay with him for then either? He won't unwin. They're not going to impeach him for divorcing her. If anything, it might be her one little like, cool, I held up my end of the bargain and now I'm going to fucking sink your legacy. Just wait till you hear what I say to microphones after you leave, or after you die. I'm mostly going to do a bunch of criticisms that I plagiarized from Michelle Obama, but they are going to still be whatever the meanest things Michelle, I don't know if you remember that she gave a speech at the convention in 2016, and it was a word for word plagiarism from something that a speech Michelle Obama had given.
I do remember this now, which is absolutely hilarious, but I think for Melania, it would be pretty fun if he became president and then to just go on a crazy like smear campaign once he's elected again. That would be pretty fun. I don't know if she would actually do that. She might get assassinated.
Yeah.
But it would be entertaining while it lasted.
I'd like it. Remember, you can call the phone number 1-833-SNOWPOD, 833-766-9763. If you have any comments that you want to add to the stories or to answer the question of the day, we actually had two of them, being as the election closes in, will the candidates focus more on policy or identity politics? Who will be worse at what? And then will Joe Biden pardon Hunter? We're going to have future segments where we listen to some of those calls and respond to them on air. A few other news things before we go. This one actually will be the speed round. Speaking of gun issues in America, in Utah this last week, an 8-year-old boy died after accidentally shooting himself with a loaded gun that was left in the car by his mother, who left him in the car with it. He did not die right away. It does seem to have been accidental, pulled the gun out from under the seat, and we'll just go with fatally injured himself. Wow. It took him, he was airlifted out of there to a hospital and died. And so I just want to add that to another level of, holy shit, why are we the ones with this problem, and how come we're not fucking solving it? There have been multiple in Utah. There was a 5-year-old in Utah who died killing himself accidentally with a handgun like less than 100 miles from Salt Lake City, also this year.
Wow, I had no idea about
We're
that.
not even
That's
making
horrible.
We're not even making people secure guns. Like,
wow.
It's not, they think they have a right to bear arms and just put them wherever the fuck they want, like loaded under the seat of a car, with the capability of an 8-year-old being able to operate it. Fucking insane. Other notable things this week: Trump said like crazy level of crazy shit about transgender people at a Moms for Liberty event this week. This is an exact quote: "That transgender thing is an incredible thing." I could do it. I could do the voice. "You know, the transgender thing is an incredible thing. Your kids go to school and come home a few days later with an operation. The school decides what's going to happen with your child. And, you know, any of these childs 15 years later say, what the hell happened to me? Who did this? It's incredible." Yeah.
What?
Right. Donald Trump said,
the school is abducting your children and giving them sexual reassignment surgery?
Yes. Yeah. They're coming home with an operation after a few days. Donald Trump doesn't seem to understand that, first of all, public schools are not boarding schools. We know you got sent to boarding schools. Remind us why that was again, Trump. What was it about it? Was it that you were too big of a piece of shit for your clan father to even abide by? Let me fix that. Alleged clan father. Alleged. But yes, that's news that happened this week, as well as,
oh my God.
Yeah. Peter Navarro also went on Fox News to suggest that they stop using, he actually went to Steve Bannon's podcast to send a message to Fox News, this after he was released from prison a month or two ago, that Fox News needs to stop calling her Kamala, as it personalizes her. He is worried that they are personalizing. It's really, really interesting, because what would the opposite of that be? Wouldn't the opposite of personalizing be dehumanizing? It's very, very interesting how his thought process is, hey, this black woman that's running for president, what if we just dehumanize her? Wouldn't that give us the better advantage? He would like them. He called it the cut the Kamala crap and stop referring her to the vice president by her first name, because it personalizes her.
That is absolutely, it doesn't feel real. It feels like idiocracy. And I'm like, how do people listen to that? And they're like, yeah,
I'm on board.
That makes sense. That's great.
These guys are so
as
smart.
if like she calling her Harris isn't also referring to her person.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
But Kamala it's too much of a brand to even compare it. She's not a soccer star. She's not Pele or Messi.
Oh, shut up.
I like that he went with
She's
a soccer
not Cher
star.
or Madonna.
Right. Soccer stars are the ones who deserve it. Deal with it. Kamala, that's why she got the Beyonce vote. Another single name icon.
Beyonce vote. Mm-hmm.
Any last words before we move to the post show, which people can go to patreon.com/Jimmy Snow if they want to hear the after show, the longer episode, and the episode that is always going to be without ads, and you can support the Jimmy Snow as a podcast there. But would you like to share any closing notes before we wrap up the podcast?
I would just like to acknowledge the fact that throughout you're definitely hearing roosters, my stomach growling, and cows in the background.
Word.
But it just adds to the ambiance. So
yeah,
maybe
you. I should have opened the window because I live near cows. But
you should have. Then we could have had just a little barnyard energy in here.
Been great. I sound isolated the room a little too much. Now I regret it.
It's okay. I like to be the star anyway. I like to set the atmosphere. Thank you.
Find Sarah Gibson on Instagram. It's Sarah.Gibson or just Sarah Gibson? I can't remember.
Just Sarah Gibson on all the things.
CERA for those of you looking for her. Mm-hmm. CERA Gibson everywhere. She's amazing. She's wonderful. Thank you for joining. We're going to play the outro now and go have fun in the post show. Bye, everyone. Here it goes. My favorite part. dance like a Mormon dad
lyrics.
at a Mormon dance.
Oh, this is fun.